Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashatayeshatayane Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Mukam karoti vachalam Pangam langayate girim Yatkripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yonta pravisha mama vachamima prasuttan sanjivayata kila shakti dhara swadhamnam anyam shahasta charana shravana tvagavi pranamamo bhagavate purushayatu katanchana smrute yasmin duskaram sukaram bhave vismrute vipritam sa Shri Chaitanya namamitam.
Can I just introduce you to everybody, even though they all know you, but still. So, we'd like to welcome His Grace Vraja Bihari Prabhu to Pittsburgh. As I had mentioned earlier, little introduction about Prabhuji. He is a seasoned international speaker, monk, counselor, self-help author, lifestyle coach, and teacher for the last 2 decades. He did his major in economics and masters in monetary policy and international finance. He is well known for his deep study of Vedic history and modern day relevant presentations. He's been actually one of the senior brahmacharis of the Radha Gopinath temple in Mumbai for almost over 2 decades now. And one thing that I do not want to embarrass him, but want to mention that he is one of the best speakers for Srimad Bhagavatam that I have personally known. Right, and his classes are like a feast. Right. So one thing that if you might have heard that in spiritual world, right, time is absent. So one can actually get that type of experience in his classes. Right, we forget time. So it's just actually over the years we have had so many brahmacharis from Gopinath temple visiting us here, and I was always thinking when would Vraja Bihari Prabhu come, and finally our desire is fulfilled and he's here with us, and we're so grateful, thankful for this wonderful opportunity. So let us all welcome Prabhuji to our Pittsburgh congregation by loudly chanting Haribol 3 times. Haribol! 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 So without taking much time, request all of us to get ready for the ride with him into the spiritual world.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shantanu, for such a generous introduction. You've been very magnanimous. Thank you. I feel very happy to be with all of you. And I'm going to speak on a topic which is quite close to my heart. And I've written a book also on this, on managing the mind. So I'm going to share some thoughts on mind management. And then it will be nice if we can have some discussions also. So anybody here who has issues with the mind, I mean not in terms of, I'm not talking in terms of psychiatric issues, but in terms of oh my mind, that kind of, anybody has it? Oh, keep your hands up, I want to see it. If there are exceptions. No exceptions, thank you. Yeah, I guess all of us are struggling with the mind. And if you have no issues with the mind, then congratulations. You are a pure devotee of Krishna. Or maybe you need to seek some professional help. Can you not have any issues? So, yeah, so what I'll do is, I'm going to share my, see, I've lived in a monastery, in an ashram for 24 years now. And I've observed certain things about myself, about others, and I'm also preaching. And I have my own struggles, which I won't share here, but so I always say this, no one is spared. So none of us are spared of the challenges posed by the mind. So I'm going to share with you what I've observed and learned in my journey, of course, based on the Vedic scriptures. So what I'm going to share is a concept from the Panchakosh, the Taittiriya Upanishad, but I'm going to speak it in a secular language, which even if you're not interested in the Upanishads, you can get a gist of what the Upanishad is talking about. So the Upanishadic language is about the inner world. Okay? So we are now going to enter into the world inside of us. There's an external world, right? The world outside of us, we are trained from childhood how to. I'm sure all of us have been taught by our parents social mannerisms. We've been taught how to be gracious in a social setting, right? We've been. I was a kid in India. I'm sure many of you are from India, so you have this experience. In India, we are trained. As soon as you can learn to speak and walk, you see anyone who is not your parent and who is elder to you, you call them Namaste, uncle. They may not be uncle, they may not be aunt, but you're supposed to call them Namaste, auntie. I don't know if you've grown up like that. I remember asking my mother, is she my auntie? No, you have to call her auntie. Namaste, auntie. So we are trained, don't dig your nose with your finger. Sit properly. We are trained to be dignified. We are trained to live with dignity, talk. We are trained in etiquette, in our speech. All that we've been taught, right? But how many of us have been taught how to think? How many of us have been told, Beta, this is your mind, intelligence, ego dynamics happening. You have to have awareness of the mind, you have to also have awareness of the ego. Do you know, my dear darling child, the ego has two bodyguards, mind and intelligence. How many of us have been taught all this? How many of us have been told that in our inner world, it's like an underworld. It's like a mafia. And there is the unseen boss whom you can never see. That is false ego. He issues a diktat. And the mind and intelligence execute it. And how does the mind execute it? How does the intelligence execute it? None of us have been taught, right? So this is a very fascinating world inside. So we won't get into the technical details of the world inside. Today I just want to give you a teaser. So that you are fascinated to work on your inner world. And then I'm sure you will find your own path also. So let's go like this. How many of you know Harry Potter? Oh, thank you. I thought Indians are also well acquainted with Harry Potter. Western audiences, they love Harry Potter. Indians also love. I remember first time I told my niece, she was 12, I was going to London. And she told me, where are you going? I said, Bhaktivedanta Manor. She knew. I didn't know that. I had been coming to London since 2005. In 2018 or 19, she told me. Oh, you're going to Watford? So just close by, there is a museum, Harry Potter Museum. She's in Bengaluru. She knows all of that. So Harry Potter is very famous. So Harry Potter, why is it fascinating? J.K. Rowling captured the imagination of the world because she presented two realities, or two worlds, right? One is the muggles and the other is the wizards. So the normal people, they have their world, but you enter that King Station, platform 9 3/4, and you enter that pillar, that wall, and where do you enter? The wizard world. And then you go to the Hogwarts School of Magic. You have Professor Dumbledore. And the wizards have their own police, their own bank, their own Olympics, their own laws, their own institutions, right? This is exactly, of course, that is fiction, but it is symbolic representation of the two worlds we live in. The world outside of us and the world inside of us. And how do we live inside is extremely important. So I'm going to speak about the three houses that you are living in your inside world. And you can ask yourself after the end of the presentation today, which of these houses you live most of the time? And can you go to the third house for some time every day, by which you find shelter, which you find strength to navigate through the troubles caused by mind. So we are now taking a different paradigm. Generally, we are encouraged to think out of the box. So if you want to solve the mind problems, then we need to discuss issues on a platform beyond the mind. Because I remember once somebody told me, Prabhu, your mind is troubling me so much, my mind. Then I started explaining to him something, and he interrupted me and said, but the mind is so unreasonable, man. And then I realized, well, his lamentation about the mind is also mind talking. The mind has come to the back door. Mind is too complicated. You can't grasp the mind, it slips out of your hand. Therefore, we need a paradigm higher than the mind. And that is the third house, which I will discuss shortly. But first, please understand, now we are entering the, like in Harry Potter, they enter the platform 9 3/4 and then you enter the wizard world. So we are now entering the inner world, okay? And just like in your outside world, you have three places where you can stay. You stay for some time in your home, then you go to office. Your body is in the office for some time, workplace. And you also spend some time in temple. You could have three houses, three places where your body stays. Similarly, in our inner world, there are three places where our mind, intelligence, ego stays. So the first house where you stay, many of us stay, is called pleasure house. Pleasure. The philosophy of somebody who is living in the pleasure house is always seeking sense gratification, fulfillment of desire. So externally, the body could be where? The body could be anywhere. We're not talking about the external world, remember. We're not talking about, it could be in temple, it could be in office, it could be in home, it could be on the moon. No, we're talking about an inner world. Where are you right now? Are you in the pleasure world or are you in a satsang program? In an inner world. So this is one house where if you are a human being, if you are a sentient being, you will live in this house. Pleasure house. I will give my own story. I was in the monastery, I joined the temple. Before joining the temple, we didn't have training during those days. In the sense, now if you want to join the monastery, you have to go through a lot of training and then you join. But I was staying at home, getting up at 7:30 in the morning, and then I decided to join the ashram. And there we started getting up at 3 in the morning. So I don't know if you've experienced this. When you get up in the morning, after 1 hour, 1.5 hours, you start feeling hungry and you eat breakfast. So at 7:30 I would wake up, and 9 o'clock I needed breakfast. And here I am getting up at 3 in the morning, so 4:30 I needed breakfast. And 4:30 was Mangalarati time, 5 o'clock was Mangalarati. And 5:30 I would be like, food. And then we had to do collective meditation, japa. And then Sankirtan, which is like chanting and dancing prayers. And then Bhagavatam class. And 9 o'clock would be breakfast. So 6 hours of torture for my body. So my body was in the temple, but my mind was screaming for food. So I remember once I was sitting in the japa period, we were sitting in a circle, semicircle, we chant together. So there's some inside secrets of the monastery I'm sharing now. We chant in a circle and we help each other not to fall asleep. Because meditation can be sometimes boring and mechanical and people fall asleep. Then, because you're sitting in a circle, the other fellow taps you on the side and then you wake up again. So I was chanting, and the person next to me was the kitchen in charge. And I looked at him, and in the middle of the chanting, I asked, just before 5 minutes of chant started, because I was hungry, right? And I was like missing my mom. My mom would serve me good breakfast, and I just joined the monastery. And I told him, "What is the breakfast today?" And he was shocked that in the middle of a meditation, and also he was much senior to me. And my question was indication that I'm an upstart. How can you ask someone senior who's the kitchen in charge what is breakfast, and that too during meditation time? So sarcastically, with a straight face, he said, "Samosas and jalebis." And samosas is my favorite, like hot samosas and jalebis, crispy Indian sweet. I mean, I was like, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah." But he was actually lying. But he just wanted to make a point that don't irritate me. The samosa and jalebis, and he continued chanting. And I was so happy at the prospect of being served samosas and jalebi that I was chanting. So this is how my body was, right? We're talking about the inner world. Where was I? In which house was I living? So I was sitting like this, and so this is how my body was. But I was thinking samosa, jalebi. And then after the japa period, then we had the Shringa, greeting of the deities. And we all chant prayers and we were dancing in kirtan. And one congregation member, one of you, somebody like you comes to temple for chanting with devotees in the mornings. He came up to me and he said, "Thank you so much." I said, "What? I was so inspired by your chanting today." You were so absorbed. Really? And he kept appreciating me so much. I didn't deny, I didn't tell him what I was doing, but I told Krishna, please forgive me. I was praying, I offered a silent prayer. But I realized that external world, you could be anywhere, but you know where you are staying. Why I'm giving the story is you don't have to tell me, you ask yourself. How much time do you spend in the pleasures house or sense gratification house? And many of us, we live either in this house, and if we are tired of being in this house, or even if we want to fulfill the desires in the external world of our pleasures that we enjoy in the inner world, then we need to come to the second world, which is the world of struggle, the house of struggle, or problem-solving house. You could be in a class and you could be thinking, I have to get groceries for tomorrow. I have to get vegetables. Oh, I have to go to office. I have to call up this guy. He's been messing around with me. Oh, she has spoken like this about me. I have to give a fitting reply. Oh, or it could be something like sending a satellite to the space. So sending a rocket to moon to buy vegetables from the market. All these are problem-solving spaces. Where there is a gap, you are trying to fill that gap. Some inadequacy, you are trying to bridge. So we live in the problem space many times. In fact, you will observe after the class also during question answers. Our questions are all in the problem solving stage. We want to sort out life, we want to control. Many of us are control freaks, they always live in this space. Control freaks live in not pleasure house as much as problem solving house. Pleasure house is also known as sense gratification. Problem house is a house of struggle. Constantly struggling. So when you're tired of struggle, because struggle is very, there is no rasa, there is no mellow, there is no juice in struggle, and you need taste, so you slip to sense gratification. After sense gratification, then you go to struggle. Struggle and sense gratification, or problem solving and pleasure, these are the two houses where we live. Most of them. Externally, you could be in a temple setting, but internally, you could be struggling. I'll give a classic example. for those of you who are from Radha Temple, Chowpatty, you know that every year we have drama festival. Professionally enacted dramas by our 5,000 members strong congregation, 4 dramas. And earlier there was a rule that even brahmacharis, monks would perform 1 drama. And this drama, and we were scared, because some of us, we were monks living in the monastery, we didn't have that expertise also. And once we had to do a drama, and one of our brahmacharis, a very shy, reticent guy, he insisted that he is also acting the drama. And he said, no, I can't act. No, you have to. We all bullied him. And he said, you have to do it. And then we assured him that he has only one dialogue. He has to come to the stage with a sword, with a spear. He is a soldier, and he has to say one dialogue. Who is Yamuna? The king has sent a palanquin for you. That's all he had to say. But he just couldn't say it. He was so nervous. So we made him rehearse. We made him rehearse it for hours. You every time fumble, makes a mistake. Who is Yamuna? The king has sent a palanquin. So finally, poor fellow, the last day, the eve of the drama festival, we practiced for 2 hours. And then, of course, whatever you do morning, you have to get up at 3:30, 4:30, and then we have our prayer, japa. Anyway, so he has been practicing for many days, and especially a lot on the night, evening before the drama. And on the day of the drama, morning, we are again chanting, and then we sat for meditation, japa. Everybody sitting in semicircle. We are in that stillness, the temple ambience, spiritual ambience. Everybody is peacefully chanting. The atmosphere in the temple is something like this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Everybody is chanting. It's an intense spiritual space. And if you are tuned in, you will just flow with the energy. And the stillness, this brahmachari friend of mine, he was sitting next to me. He was chanting. But where do you think he was living in? Which house? Struggle house. Or problem solving house. So internally, what he was doing? Rehearsing the dialogue. The king has sent a palanquin to something like that. And externally, they were all chanting. And suddenly, as we were chanting, a voice boomed in the temple hall. What was that? Who is Yamuna, the king? He realized, okay, and he had spoken out loud what was going on in his mind for the last 1 hour. So, if our inside and outside is different, I don't know if you have experienced. The inside sooner or later takes revenge. Inside is very nasty. So this guy was chanting, and we all thought we were all chanting, praying. But poor fellow, because he was so absorbed that it came out of his mouth. He was living so much in the problem-solving world or the struggle world that he just lost it. So these are the 2 houses where we live. Now I am inviting you. I am asking you, can you now? Let us say all of you admit, you don't have to tell me that, yeah, you spend a lot of time either in pleasure house or problem solving. Too much in problem solving house, we want some taste, so we come back to pleasure house. After working so hard, whole day, solving so many problems, then I sit and allow my senses to get stimulated by watching Netflix for 6 hours. Like a zombie, I sit in front of the television screen. Because I need pleasure. So this is how people live their lives. Pleasure, problem solving. Sense gratification, struggle. So we are asking you to explore a 3rd house, which is also there. And you have full right to enter this house, but you have kept it locked. And that house is a house of shelter or peace. Okay, what is shelter or peace? Let me just see if these 3 words resonate with you. Peace, right? All of us know what is peace. But I'm going deeper. Sense of belonging. You know that I belong here. I belong. Like a child feels that in the arms of her mother. Or okay, another word is safe. Do you feel safe? Just try to connect to these words: safe, shelter, and a sense of belonging in your inner world. It could be nature walk, it could be journal. For me, it is journaling, or prayers, chanting, sankirtan, reading wisdom books. Okay, to make the point, see, I call this shelter house or peace house. You can call it as a home state. To make the point more graphic, I'll give an example. I'll be able to convey the point more clearly. In our inside world, there is what is a state called as a home state. A home in your inside world. Just like in the outside world, you need a home to rush to. What happens when you come home? After a tiring and exhausting day, you feel safe, you feel a sense of belonging, you feel shelter. In an idyllic world, I mean, I'm not sure that's how the houses are, homes are today. But I'm just saying, in an ideal world, home is a place where we find a sense of belonging, we feel safe, we feel sheltered, right? I'm asking you, is there a home for you like that in your inner world? I know one devotee, generally there are some gender-specific roles in all societies, But now, of course, we're becoming more gender neutral. But in India, I was very fascinated that I know one man, he has defied his gender-specific role and he loves to make garlands for people. Generally, the women in our temples make garlands and the men are running around. But he loves to make garlands because that is his home state. He feels very connected to the Lord. He feels very connected to himself. So we are talking about a non-electronic world, we're not talking about a virtual world. You can't say, Prabhu, my home state is Netflix or YouTube. We'll discuss some other time how electronic world is not the real world. Electronic world cannot be your home state. That's another topic for another day. But I'm talking about in a non-digital world. What is your home state where you feel safe? What activity or state of being where you're not resisting what's coming to you? Listen to these words. These are very well chosen words. You are in a non-resistant mood. Generally when you're in the struggle house, you are resisting what's coming to you. You are trying to push, pull. In pleasure house, you are allowing your senses to get titillated. But in shelter house, you are not resisting the peace. You are vulnerable. You are allowing yourself to be influenced. Like for example, simple example. Right now, if you are present, this could be your home state because you are vulnerable. You are, in one sense, you are not. You have shown a lot of faith. You didn't know what I'm going to come and speak here, but you have shown some faith. You've been here. You're spending your precious time here. So if you are just present, you will make a transition and you will enter that space where you are allowing yourself to be influenced, where you are basically allowing the universe to take charge of your life. That is a home state. Is there any area, any state of being or activity in your inner world where you spend time? And that is your home state. I'll give an example. In the external world, I'm giving an example of a home state in the external world. You'll be able to connect to the inner world. See, I grew up in Mumbai. One of my friends was staying in a very low-lying area, slum area, and he had heavy rains and he needed help. So I went up to his house and I helped him remove some important documents. And by that time, the rainwater had increased so much. And in these low-lying areas, when rain causes flood, not so much because of the rain, but because of the water coming out of the toilets, the commode, the whole. And at one point of time, we were all in neck-deep waters. This is when I was in college. And I knew what is this water because there were some 50 houses in that small area. So low, and I was like, that yuck feeling? All the stool, urine, and it's all on your body. I'm sorry for this. But I have to make a point. Sometimes to make an emphatic point, you need to say something strong. So I was like this. I can't describe what I was going through. And then I had to walk 3 kilometers to my house. It was in South Bombay. My father was in government service. We had good flats, good apartments. But here I was helping a friend. But after that, there was no buses, no trains because it was heavy rains, and I had to walk with that yuck feeling. And then I reached home. I rang the bell, and my mom opened the door, and I ran to the washroom, and I put on the shower. And I can't tell you how many. I don't know how long I was standing under the shower. I put the entire. I think I finished off the whole soap bar. I wanted to be clean, and then finally I came outside to the balcony of our house, next to the ocean, breeze blowing, and my mom brought me hot tea and hot pakoras. I was like, I'm feeling safe now. I'm feeling shelter. I feel a sense of belonging. I am here now. I'm safe now. So this is a home in the external world, where we similarly you may be facing, you know what I'm talking about. The life gives you what I got in that slum area. Life gives you that, right? Everybody gets their share of, and the only choice it seems you have is the topping that you have on it. But you all get a packet, a plate full of yuck. It's miserable. So at that time when you are filled with that yuck feeling and miserable and why have been misunderstood, why this is happening to me, injustice, life is not fair, suffering. And then you need that space. Can you go somewhere where you find that space? Where you feel not being judged. Like my journal is my best companion because I never feel judged by my journal. Every human being, nobody understands. I don't know if you felt nobody understands me. कोई नहीं मिलता समझने वाला, जो भी मिलता है समझा के चला जाता है. But the main translation is, you get no one who can understand you. Whoever you meet, they just explain to you everything and they leave you. Nobody understands you. So, but journaling is a great companion. So I feel safe. I feel a sense of belonging. Also, when you sit in front of deities, not necessarily chanting, just being with deities, praying, just being there. So, for each one of us, it could be different. But we all need a home state. So my appeal to you is spend at least, to begin with, half an hour every day in that home state. And then you get the strength to live in the struggle space and the self-gratification space. Because those two spaces are transitory, they are filled with their baggage of suffering. But we need to enter a timeless space. We need to enter a space where we are one with the universe. See, once I was driving from North Mumbai to South Mumbai during COVID times, because trains were not working in Mumbai, and we got stuck in a traffic jam for 5 hours, and the AC got spoiled. So I was in the heat, Mumbai heat, traffic jam, a lot of anxiety, suffering, heat. Finally, when I reached my room in the temple, that feeling I cannot describe, it's ineffable. So when you are stuck in traffic jam in your inner world, jam, in terms of relationships, in terms of, I don't know if you have experience, why this relationship is not moving ahead? What's happening? Why am I stuck in this relationship? Why am I stuck in this project? Why am I stuck in this issue? Unresolvable issues are like traffic jams. So, and we think that if I think more, I'll get some solution. No, you are just living in the struggle house. Your thinking will not solve the problem, it's just entangling it more. You need to live in the home state for some time to get strength to solve the problem later on. Albert Einstein, his name is synonymous with genius, right? In India, even now, if you say he's an Einstein, that means you are saying he's a genius. Albert Einstein, people glorify a lot, but little do they know, most people don't know that Albert Einstein had this habit. Every day he would stare for hours outside his window. Just doing nothing. He was at peace with himself. Modern people find it shocking. How can somebody just... I grew up with my grandparents and in a village, first 10 years. My grandmother and grandfather would take me out for a walk. And the evenings, we would sit in the field and they would look into the vast expanse of the fields. And I would wonder, what are they doing? You know, my grandfather would sit like this. And then occasionally, maybe one sentence or something my grandfather or grandmother would speak with her. Occasionally, something. Yeah, okay. And then they would continue. And I would look at my granddad and then my grandmom. And then after some, I don't know what, long time, they would say, okay, let's go back home. And they would go back home. That was their entertainment. While I was sitting in the temple in my outside the room, I was just sitting like this. I had done my pranayama and I was, I had entered a space of peace. All the clutter had gone out and kind of, I was like this. So just then my friend, who was a manager in the ashram, he came up to me, "Oh, we have an urgent emergency meeting. Can you come?" I said, "No." "Hey, come, just it will just take half an hour." I said, "Okay, you must be busy, right?" He said. He immediately said, "You must be busy, right? That's why you can't come." I said, "No, I'm not busy." "Oh, then you're doing something right now?" I said, "No, I'm doing nothing." "Well, then you should come." I said, "No, I'm busy doing nothing." So he couldn't understand. So he said, so okay, wait. Are you memorizing shlokas? Because I quote in a Bhagavatam classes, I quote lot of verses from the Bhagavatam, left, right, center. And people know who are the classes, they know that, oh, you must have spent a lot of time memorizing them. So you must be memorizing shlokas. I said, "No, I'm not." "You must be praying to Krishna, right?" I said, "I'm not sure, but I'm just..." "No, but you are doing something." I said, "No." "How can you not be doing something? You should be doing something." I said, "I am doing nothing." And then you're the manager. He's always a manager. So we had a bewildered look on his face. And as he was going, I stopped him. I said, "Prabhu." And then like a wise sage who gives pearls of wisdom. Spontaneously, I raised my hand and I said, "Prabhu, it requires a lot of hard work to do nothing." He was like, "Wow." Anyway, I'm not suggesting that we become just stare into the open space all the time. There's an emphatic point I'm making. Can we be at peace with ourselves? Can we be in our home state? We are living in a world where stimulation is encouraged. We have to be artificially. I remember when I came to spiritual life, we used to hear our spiritual teachers give class sometimes for 4 hours at a time, stretch. And even if we were bored, we had no choice. I had to just sit in the class. And what happens when you sit with that boredom and you sit through it, especially the atmosphere is surcharged with spiritual energy, you get sucked in. But now, if you're bored, you're just 1, 2, 3 seconds away from removing boredom. This is crazy. So we have got disconnected from ourselves. So home state is a state where you connect with yourself, where you are aware of what's happening inside you, and you're at peace. So I'll give an example. It may sound self-praise, but I want to just assure you that it works. I stayed with my mother for 8 months during COVID, and she had some health issues, emotional, mental health issues, and then there were a lot of complications, and I had to manage so many things, and I was getting overwhelmed. But by the Lord's grace, I knew the concept of a home state because I had learned it in my own journey. So whatever happened every day, I made it a point that at least 2 hours I would spend, 2.5 hours I would spend on myself, journaling. I would get up at 2 in the morning and start journaling. Because I knew the whole day, I barely managed to complete my quota of japa. So I needed that home space. Sometimes it was just half an hour, but I managed to 30 minutes to 2 hours. I managed to give myself every day, and that's because why I'm saying this example is because I know many of you will say, "Oh, Prabhu, you are a monk, living in a monastery, you have no obligations or responsibilities, so you can, afford to be in a home state. You are always driven by circumstances and compulsions and responsibilities." No, I beg to differ. Human beings are not creatures of circumstances, they are creatures of choice, but we have forgotten. And if I was living like a grahastha, okay? I was living like all of you married people. The only difference I didn't have a wife, but I had a mother. I had to take care of her, and she was very sick. And 24/7 I was with her. But I was living in a home state where it was not my mother, it was me. And it is not being selfish, it is self-care, is not being selfish. People are scared to take care of themselves. Selflessness and selfishness are extremes, but self-care is what helps you serve selflessly. Anyway, so I did that for 8 months, and one day I was convinced that home stay is a must for everyone. And that's when I decided to broadcast it and preach about it. Because one day there was a cyclone in the place, the hometown where I was staying, Udupi, South Indian town. And there was a cyclone, and the coconut tree started swinging, and I saw a big snake fall on the terrace of our house. And I ran down, and my mom was sitting on the bed. She was completely shaken, but she couldn't express. And she was worried, but I held her hand, and I sat with her. And then the electricity went off, and there was nothing we could do. It was pitch dark, midnight, and my mother is not a thin lady, she's quite well built, and I can't lift her and run anywhere. And I knew that, and things were messed. I can't discuss the details, but some things fell, and then the windows were open. I didn't know where to go and get. Anyway, it was a crazy thing. The winds were blowing really hard. At one point of time, I thought this is the end, because I had kept my mosquito and it just flung off. Crazy, it was crazy. I actually, honestly speaking, I thought the sword of death was hanging above our heads. And I held my mother's hand, and at one point of time, I went into that breathing space for a few seconds. And because of the practice I had done for the last 8 months, at that point of time, knowing that anything could happen now, I was shocked and surprised. I had entered inadvertently a space of serenity. I can't describe it, but I was so peaceful. I felt it was as if I was ready, and I looked at my mom, and I continued holding her hand. The strokes help, just kind pat on her back and her hand, and she's also looking at me. And as if both of us are at peace. And as if I was ready for what's going to happen now. And trust me, I don't know how to explain this, but I felt one with the universe. I felt totally insignificant, vulnerable, utterly useless, a speck, tiny speck in the vast cosmos. I felt totally insignificant, but I felt totally loved. It's a paradox. Generally, we think in this world, to feel love, we think we have to be important and somebody prominent and somebody has to be loud. That's what we think generally. And we think if you are insignificant and if you feel you're lowly, nobody, then you are you may lack self-esteem. This is a paradox, to feel utterly insignificant and to also feel loved. And this joy of insignificance is what we experience when we're in a home state. When we practice living in a home state, you are internally detached. You know when to disconnect from this world, because everything is temporary at the end of the day. So home state is a beginning where through either directly spiritual activities or quasi-spiritual activities, you can experience safe sense of belonging, shelter, and peace. So the class today was to encourage you to discover your home state and live in that state, live in your home for some time, in your inner world. Then you can go to office. Then you can go to, if somebody imagines you don't have a home and is just working whole day and enjoying and partying, do you think that person will be emotionally balanced, stable? Somebody just goes to work and goes to party. After partying, back to work. He needs a home. Similarly, you are seeking pleasure, you are also seeking to solve problems. You need a home in your inner world. And I would like to end with one short story. I heard it from Vraja Bihari Prabhu. I really loved it. This is from one of the Upanishads, that once one man came to a sage and said, I have a lot of problems in my life, I need help. And the sage said, get me a handful of salt. He got a handful of salt. And the sage said, put it in this cup of water. And the sage said, now drink it. He drank, and what do you think happened? He puked. And then the sage said, get me another handful of salt. Again he brought salt. And the sage said, come with me. And he took him to a nearby lake, a beautiful lake. And he said, put this salt in the lake. And the sage said, now drink the water from the lake. He drank. And how was the water? Sweet. So the sage said, all of us have and same amount of problems and anxieties, handful of salt. Your choice is to make your inner world, ask yourself whether your inner world is a cup of water or a lake of water. Expand your inner world. Expand your heart space, home space. Expand your heart. Live in a space of gratitude. Live in a space of abundance. Not always gaps, but also gains. What I have gained in life. How I am blessed. Count your blessings. So when we expand our heart, that's like living. That's like taking water from the lake, and the handful of salt doesn't matter. So therefore, for today's presentation, to summarize, we spoke about just like in the outside world, just like the Harry Potter world, there are two worlds, the wizard world and the Mugger's world. We spoke about how in our lives we have two worlds, the outer world and the inner world. In the outer world, we are trained to live and deal in a certain way. But in inner world also we need to understand there are three houses or three spaces where we can live. And if we choose to live in the home state, which is a state of shelter, peace, sense of belonging, we will get the strength to navigate through the pleasures and the problems that come in this world. Hare Krishna. I also shared some stories from our ashram and my personal life. Hare Krishna. Any comments, questions, discussions on what we have presented today?
Prabhuji, first of all, can I congratulate you on speaking so well and on a topic I heard only a little bit at the end. I missed the initial part, but you discussed a very, very complex problem that everybody has to deal with. My question for you is, you mentioned something called quasi-spiritual practice. Now, either you have spiritual practice or not, or is the quasi-spiritual practice just a step towards getting true spiritual practice? Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean by quasi-spiritual practice?
See, we come from a tradition where we are practicing direct spiritual activities like chanting, praying to the Lord. They are conventional, traditional spiritual practices. And there are gross materialistic activities like hard partying, liquor, having promiscuous relationships. Those kind of, that's like the other extreme, right, of spirituality. So generally, when we are new in spiritual life, when I was new in my spiritual practices, I thought of life in terms of black and white. I thought of, okay, either you are chanting and reading Bhagavatam, or you are in illusion. But in my own journey, I realized that there is something in between, which is not material, which is not materialistic, but it can be a springboard for connecting to Lord. Journaling is one of them. Breathing is one of them. Yoga is one of them. Yoga is not directly spiritual. I mean, yoga is, but the way yoga is practiced nowadays, it's more like a physical exercise, but still it has a lot of benefits. It helps you pause down. It helps you to pause your life. So yoga, I consider it as a quasi-spiritual activity. It's not a direct, a sincere yoga teacher here, whoever is teaching you 1 hour of yoga session, he'll admit it's not a spiritual activity. It just gives you good health. But inherently yoga has an ability to help you connect to something higher than yourself. Anything that helps you connect to a reality above yourself is taking you on a spiritual journey. It cannot be directly spiritual activity recognized by the traditional spiritual paths. But we are living in 21st century. So cut off from the world when the scriptures are written, and we may require our own ways of coming closer to spiritual paths. So honestly, nature walks, like I love to spend time in the park sitting. If there's a banyan tree close to our temple, It's 500 years old apparently. I mean, that's what the caretaker says. And I sit under that tree, giant tree, and I feel, I can't describe what I feel. I feel these three things: sense of belonging, safety. You may say, but how does it happen? No, just have to be present. Like one of our very senior leaders in ISKCON, Rabba Govinda Maharaj. Whenever he sees a banyan tree, he offers Dandava Pranam. Whenever he sees a people tree, he offers Pranam. He says people is Vishnu, banyan is Shiva. So we have disconnected from nature. We can't see God in Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter, 10th chapter. It's all about seeing God in nature. So for me, nature is a way to, of course, nature has its suggestively flaws also. That's another subject matter. But basically, wherever we can connect to a reality other than my body and mind and senses, that's a path of spirituality. So it could not, when I said quasi-spiritual, I was referring to activities which you may love, but you are not sure because it is not sanctioned or endorsed by traditional spiritual paths or organizations.
So, different question to follow up on that. So, when you're chanting, oftentimes our chanting is faulty. It's not very focused. You're thinking of, your mind has a chatter all the time. Is that quasi-spiritual?
Chanting, yeah, because that chanting, at least you're in the space of sound vibration, and you can make yourself comfortable there. But
next step is how do you make that activity?
Transition. How do you move to how to make it spiritual, right? So there are some important steps. Like let's say you are chanting, your mind is wandering everywhere. So I written a book called Mind Your Mind, and I speak about 3 principles. These 3 principles will help you make a transition in any situation you are in, from the struggle space to the shelter space. Whenever you are in pleasure or problem-solving space, you can jump to the peace space by following these 3 principles, which is awareness, acceptance, and aspiration. Awareness means asking a simple question: what is happening now? So that simple question helps you separate yourself from your mind. And then accept. Accept that your mind is wandering. Don't keep fighting. Because the more you're struggling and pulling your mind back, the more you're living in the problem space. Are you getting it? It's like the problem space is eternal. Our default setting is struggle space, because that's what Bhagavad Gita says. The material world is a place of struggle. You're constant. You see a hen eat grains. She's scared. A cat will come from somewhere and pounce on her. So, ahara, nidra, bhaya, maitun. These 4 things are prominent in material world, and bhaya, defending, struggle, is the name of the game. You have locked your houses and come here because you're scared, fear, defense. You put your money in banks. Governments are spending billions of dollars on defense expenditure. Defense, struggle. There's always a struggle. We can't avoid it. But accepting, okay, my mind is wandering, that finishes the struggle at that moment. And then aspiration. If you have spent some time reflecting and connecting to an aspiration, something higher than yourself, and then you gently move to that aspiration and come back to the present. And like this in any situation, like I was driving from, they were coming from New Vrindavan here. I was talking to the devotee who was driving me. And after some time, I realized I'm disconnected from myself. Because, in New Vrindavan, I was talking to somebody for hours. And I had to pack my bags. So I was rushing from one activity to the next. So in the car, at one point of time, as we were discussing something intense, I realized that I'm getting disconnected. I'm losing it. So I told him, can I answer your question in a moment? Can you give me 5 minutes? He said, of course, Prabhu. And then I was sitting next to him. I just switched off. I did just breathe in, connected to myself, connected to my vision, that aspiration part. Because awareness comes when we breathe, when we just pause. I accepted, okay, I've been in a lot of passion. Since morning I'm running around. Slow down. What is my aspiration? I want to serve, I want to connect, I want to give my best. So then I was like, ready? And then I went back. So then when you were talking to me, I was present, I could empathize, I could understand. Otherwise, I was getting restless. See, if you want to really give your best, so you need to be aware, you need to accept, and then connect your aspiration and move on. So that's the best way to. What we do in Hare Krishna, when we are too much in the struggle zone, you know how we enter the shelter zone? Most of the devotees will reveal this. We add the principle of remembrance of Krishna. A silent prayer. Krishna, I love you. Krishna, please accept me. Krishna, I am yours. I was hearing a class of Srila Prabhupada yesterday. Prabhupada is saying, prayer means 3 words. Please accept me. Wow, what a prayer. We are just telling Krishna, this is who I am. There is acceptance in that prayer, you know. I'm like this, please accept me, Krishna. So when we add this element of remembrance of Krishna, you will see that in any situation of pleasure or problem solving, you immediately experience peace. The remembrance of Krishna fills our heart, that prayer fills our heart with peace. Okay, now before any other question, I want to give a case study on how I apply this, because you asked about how to make the transition from quasi spiritual to spiritual, or how to actually be in the safe home state. I'll give one case study. I took a yatra of 250 people on a pilgrimage to Vrindavan in the month of Kartik. And these 150, 200 people were depending on me for quote unquote inspiration. I was their yatra leader, I was giving a talk. And you know what I said? Tomorrow is the last day of Kartik. It's going to be the most auspicious day. And the Mangalarati in the temple, Krishna Balaram temple, is going to be very special. And all of you have to come for Mangalarati at 4:30. It's 4:10 it starts in Prabhupada Samadhi. 4:30 in the morning. All of you will come? Hari Bol, yes, Prabhuji, we are there. And everybody was like, I've inspired them. They have to come and they're also ready. Gango. And then we had Prasadam, they all slept. And morning I get up early. And I got up at 3:30 to rush for the temple. And as soon as I got up, fear gripped me. Because I'm claustrophobic. I hate crowds. I know it, but the passion of being lecture and I my fears, my stress, my fears, you know, the passion. I'm a very inspired room. Oh, my intelligence is saying, the mind is saying, no, so much you can't do that. If I won the battle, most of the war, and spiritual program would have been a struggle. Suddenly people would have said, wow, you are so spiritual, you came to Mangalarati, but they have said, I'm deluding myself that I'm not spiritual. And I'm actually is this awareness accepting the activity. I just sat, paused, aware what is happening now. Mind is protesting against going to the temple. Let me become aware first of all. And then I accept this. My dear mind, I can't do it. And then aspiration. But that's in the holy of the Lord. See what is the mind? You become aware and you become very aware. Then the mind becomes if you have no aspiration, things like this in a relationship, your partner is disturbed. And as he or she is telling you something, and you will give a solution, it's going to worsen that. The first rule of the relationship communication is first listen. Listen is awareness. Listen is the mind. And acceptance is like understanding. You listen, but then when you reflect back what the partner said, you reflect what she has said, then you are kind of assured in that you understand acceptance, aspiration, and be gentle with the mind. So this is the way we negotiate with the mind. But sometimes we have to be tough. We have to struggle. But then you need some. So it was a struggle for me. But what I did, the morning class I cancelled. I said somebody else to give a class, and I spent that 1 hour journaling. So, see, sometimes you have to struggle, right? You can't just say, I'll never struggle. No, you have to be in the struggle. For me, the entire morning Mangalarti was more of a struggle, but I did manage to negotiate with the mind reasonably well. And then I did spend my time in a homestay where I don't struggle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Mangesh, no?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I initiated.
Mukunda Leela.
Mukunda Leela. Sorry, I remember your Mangesh.
I got initiated after I left Gopinath. So.
Yeah. I know your Mangesh.
Very nice class, Prabhuji. So you talked about this homestay or sheltered place, but and you found yours. But it's not easy for everybody to know what their homestay is, and maybe initially people may try certain different things and may get confused with the pleasure home as the homestay.
Okay, how do you know the difference between a pleasure state and a peace state? Or that's a very common question.
And how long to keep struggling? I mean, that part, somebody finds the homestay really quickly, and some people don't. And then where to find? Do we compromise?
There are two questions here. Just correct me if I'm wrong. You're asking two questions. One is, how do you distinguish between a pleasure state and a peace state? Or sense gratification and shelter? That is one question. And second is, how do we find our home state? There are two questions there, right? Correct?
Interconnected, but yes.
Yeah, there are two questions.
Yeah.
Interconnected. So let us take the first one. How do we know what is so there is a difference between pleasure and happiness. Stimulation and satisfaction. Stimulation is when the senses are bombarded. This is dopamine kick. You get a notification, you see it, right? So pleasure is something which, when you get that kick, when you get that excitement, that reward hormone, the reward chemical. It's not a happiness chemical, huh? Dopamine is not a happiness chemical. It's a reward chemical, which means happiness is around the corner. If I check the message, I will get happy. I'm about to be. That's stimulation. I need to do this. I'm going to be. That's stimulation. Satisfaction is you are completely at peace. You don't need to agitate your senses. You are even at peace with your pain, which means you can sit. They say, eye of the storm, there is peace. Have you heard this saying? Similarly, sometimes when we are in pain, devotees immediately want distraction. One devotee was sharing an interesting thing. He said, I went through business losses and I saw my relationships have some issues. I saw some different roles in my life, and I observed that during that period, my social media activity is also quite high. And I got a connection after some years. I realized that whenever I am suffering or going through trouble, I am keeping myself distracted rather than face the problems. So for many of us, this has become a distraction. We are not using the smartphone, we are getting used by the smartphone. So stimulation is when we are looking for some relief from suffering by stimulating ourselves. Stimulation is the drive. That is pleasure. The simple proof is, sometimes initially 1 or 2 notifications gave you a certain kind of pleasure. But over a period of time, you will get 50 notifications to give you the same kind of pleasure. So the increased amount of stimulants that you need to get the same amount of pleasure, that is pleasure. Then you know that it is not. But satisfaction is even a little. Like for example, sometimes like I was telling you when I was coming in from New Vrindavan, I was just disconnected and disturbed. So it just took me 2 minutes to connect. I didn't need a lot of chanting. Of course, I have to chant every day as a quota, but I'm saying it's like it's more deeper. It's not at the sensual level. It's not simply the sensual. Like I don't think I explained. Once I was going on a morning walk, one lady walked from this side. Heavy perfume, heavy. So when that perfume enters your nostrils, it titillates your nose and your senses, right? Like all of us must have experienced that. And after some time, I continued walking, and there was a rose garden. There was fresh fragrance from the rose flower that entered my nostrils, and I could immediately contrast the paradox. It was a deeper experience. Like you watch rain on an electronic screen, a very well shot, high resolution movie depicting rain in the Amazon forest, and then watch rain out of your window, which gives you a more fulfilling experience. So this is a simple way to understand what is the stimulant, what is the pleasure, and what is the happiness or satisfaction. Like if you are connected, watching a great thriller movie on the screen it will be pleasure, and we all need pleasure. I'm not against pleasure, okay? But because when you're suffering a lot, sometimes you need a painkiller, right? But the problem is we take painkillers to be medicine. That's the problem. Painkillers are painkillers. Know that this is some pleasure I need. The dog is barking a lot. Feed him some food. The mind is so you need some pleasure. But I've seen sometimes when I sit outside my window, I see in the full moon night, I see some dogs sleeping, some beggar walking on the street. I mean, being with the world, being present, that can be more satisfying than the titillation we get from sense. So that is the answer to the first question. The difference between pleasure and happiness is different. Stimulation and satisfaction is different. So, and you can know it if you simply pause. If you are just jumping from one activity to another whole day, then it's very difficult for us to gauge what is satisfying and what is pleasurable. Get mixed up. That is first. The second regarding how do we discover our home state? See, home state is the principle. It's not that one activity. It's not for me. There are 15. I have a basket of activities. I call it a basket of. Every day before sleeping, I ask myself, okay, which are the things I picked up from the basket today? So it may not be all the 15 every day. But trust me, if you can find out, and it's not difficult. If you just ask yourself, where do you feel a sense of belonging, shelter, safe? I feel a lot of safety in breathing, conscious breathing. I've not found it in our Vedic scriptures, in our Bhakti literatures. Nobody has told us to breathe. But because our lives are so passionate, breathing has helped me remove all the clutter from my head. It's like going to the washroom, you go to the washroom and release all the stuff. So similarly, when I just sit down and inhale to the count of 4, pause for 2 seconds, and then exhale to the count of 4 slowly, not struggle. And then I see it's like releasing the things from your head. So that could be one. And then slowly you can discover, you can find out a wide range of activities. So, and you can pick up 1 or 2, 3, 4. For me, here in Prabhupada's class, Srila Prabhupada have this machine, red colored machine. There are some 1,000 lectures of Prabhupada. When I hear his voice, I can't describe. He says, "So, you rascal." I just feel shelter. I feel my grandfather is giving me a hug. Yes, so I just listen to that class. And sometimes I just listen for an hour. And then I know, okay, I have put off 2 hours of home state activities for today. Krishna, now I have to rush and I have to be busy. Fine, do it. But when you're in trouble, when life gets overwhelming, you know what to do. Otherwise, most people, they start digging a well when the house is on fire. It doesn't work. The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So now, when your life is not overwhelming, spend some time every day, and then when it gets intense, suddenly you get a phone call, some bad news. You know what to do. I lost my passport and everything in Madrid last month. It was crazy. I was in the terminal. Huge, Madrid airport is huge. And there is one girl, Shamali, 18-year-old girl. Now, I knew her parents even many years before she was born. So I've seen her grow like this. And now she's a very good devotee, singer, kirtaniya. And so in the Pandavasana retreat, I was meeting her many times and I was appreciating her, talking to her. And then she went her way. But oh Krishna, oh the Lord arranged this. I was at Madrid airport and I realized my terminal is somewhere else. I took a bus. And one friend of mine said, one of the male, one of the devotees said, I'll come with you to help you. I said, okay, come. I said, I don't need, but if you don't let me come, I have free time. So he came with me. We were in the bus, going to the next terminal. And suddenly Shamli walks in from the other door. She also had another terminal, not my terminal, and she's in the bus. And then we're talking, and then my terminal came. I got off the bus, but I forgot my backpack, which contained my passport. I kept it on the seat, and I walked away, and we went ahead, and I was about to go there to the counter after almost 10 minutes, 8 minutes. And I realized my passport is not backpack. And that's when Shamali calls, not me, this friend of mine. And fortunately, his phone was on. And she says, did probably forget his passport bag? And he says, yeah, I'll ask him. And he asked me, and then I realized, yes, I don't have a passport bag. Bros, all hell broke loose. But because of my practice, this just happened last month. I said, Prabhu, whatever it is, I think there are 30 seconds. I could pause. In that was a test. Whatever happened, 30 seconds I have. Fortunately, she saw that bag and she assumed it's mine. She called him, so many factors. And then he ran, he took another bus, went to her because she was missing her flight. I'm just giving a story. This can happen to all of us in different situations, different examples. And he ran and she was getting late for her flight. Fortunately, it was like a movie. Then he got his bag and then he came. What if I hadn't come with me? There's so many ifs and buts. Even sometimes now I get. But then what I do, I just say, thank you, Krishna. Thank you. It's all miracles. This is one entry in my gratitude journal for the day. So like this, I'm sure suddenly we get overwhelmed sometimes. So this gratitude, this homestay practices help us. Like I know one devotee when he's troubled, he spontaneously goes to the beat bag. He starts chanting Hare Krishna. I can't do that. For me, chanting is like a discipline, a duty. For me, Bhagavatam is Prabhupada's classes is homestay. But if you think, if I preach, no, chanting has to be a homestay, you'll be like, okay, you'll be forcing yourself to chant, but then when you are disturbed, you'll go to YouTube. You can't pick up the beat bag. So instead of telling you the glories of chanting, I'm telling you the glories of you finding your home state, because then when you are pro, you will engage in life enhancing activities. Activities that add value to your life. Now, one question you could ask in the night before sleeping. Did I enhance my life today or did I alienate myself from life? Life enhancing. Did my activities today enhance my life? Did it add value to my life? 1, 2, 3. Yesterday in the night before sleeping, I saw 11 activities I did which were good. 11 life enhancing activities. So I slept feeling a sense of gain. 11 things, it's a big deal. I did 11 good things today. Morning I see the gaps. Okay, I have to do so many things today. But if night also you are seeing the gaps, you will remain eternally dissatisfied. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here. Yes, sir.
I have one question. You were mentioning that example of a devotee coming to you saying, "There's a crisis, please come," and then you said that it needs a lot of hard work.
That was a joke, Prabhu. Don't interrogate me on that. Because I don't subscribe to it myself. We all need to do things and services are there. Okay, go on.
I was just saying that basically sometimes or oftentimes the same point, right? Hard work or struggle. Sometimes we have to struggle a lot to get into the home space, or sometimes in the home space you have to struggle, right? Like for example, chanting, right? If chanting is really one of the factors of getting a home space, you have to struggle to actually get there, right? So how do we, is trying to chant effectively, is it the struggle space, or is it the home space, or is it both?
Beautiful. Beautiful. So you are saying, how do we uh, reality presents itself like this, that even if you want to be in a home state, you have to struggle. Right? So I'll present it like this, see if it makes sense. There is something called as detachment. Detachment means the willingness to accept reality for what it is. Sometimes when you are struggling a lot, so if you just let go the struggle at that moment.
Can we define detachment like that?
Detachment in that particular situation where you are really struggling to, let's say you are chanting, let's say you are written in a book, in your one of your basket of activities, let's say chanting. Chanting is your home state. But you picked up your beat bag and you are struggling to chant. And you are like, your mind is saying, drop this, go there, do that, right? So then you are struggling with it. And you are saying, but this is my home state. I'm supposed to be happy here. But I'm struggling with this. So that's the nature of the mind. Mind will never allow you to be comfortable anyway. Therefore, I spoke about these three principles of awareness, acceptance, and aspiration. So when you accept that you are struggling, although this is your home state, although apparently like Prabhupada's class, for me, Srila Prabhupada's class is my oxygen. But I sometimes, my mind is running everywhere as I'm hearing the class. So what do? I accept that I'm struggling. I accept that I'm not present. That acceptance is, there are two things, denial and acceptance. Denial is when we are struggling and saying that no, I have to do it. I will control my mind. I will be attentive. That is denial, because that is a struggle which is not helping you become peaceful. Acceptance is when you are not in denial. You are saying that I'm struggling, you are offering a silent prayer, and you are present, and then you are moving ahead. You are connected to yourself as you are struggling. And that struggle is actually peace giving. That makes the whole journey worth it. Because denial is the worst kind of lie. Because that is a lie we speak to ourselves. So when I'm struggling, so now I'm given a class on being present. Time is very powerful. I'm going to be humbled sooner or later. Oh, you're going to get focused so much on home state. Then I'm going to struggle also. So that time I have to be forgiving to myself. It's okay, Vraja Bihari Prabhu. It's okay to speak lofty principles and not be yourself up to that mark. It's okay, you are not a hypocrite. It's okay. So when you're honest with yourself that you're struggling and you're accepting it and then again reconnecting, that struggle will actually give you the sense of shelter. It's remembrance of Krishna. For hardcore devotee Krishna conscious practitioners, the principle given is always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. It's a remembrance that adds rasa. Like Modi, see Modi example, Narendra Modi, all of you know, right? I can't give this example in India because it becomes political. People either hate Modi or they love him. But in America, I can freely give example of Modi because I'm not a Modi bhakta, I'm Krishna bhakta. So now, if what is spoken about Modi is true by his followers, right? Like he doesn't take all his salary he gives away. He has not taken a holiday since 20 plus years, and all the gifts that he gets, he takes that money and uses it for girls' education. All those stories. He doesn't have a companion, and he sleeps only 4.5 hours at night. And as soon as he goes to bed, he gets good sleep, and he wakes up fresh. I mean, these are all crazy, unbelievable. If all that is true, that means he's a yogi who is described in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 54 to 72. And how does he do it? Because in all the struggle, he is present. He is in a detached mode. The detached mode means not trying to control, accepting and then moving forward, accepting, moving forward, accepting, moving forward. So we think acceptance means resigning and not improving. And we think improving and struggling means always going forward. We find these two words contradictory. Acceptance and moving forward. I didn't say either you accept or move forward. I said accept and move forward. So that is detachment. So I see Modi is able to do it. If Modi can do it, we can do it. We can be busy the whole day and get a good rest at night. Because even when you are struggling, you are at peace. Because you are connected with the divine. You are connected to a reality above you. I give a very mundane example to make my point. I know one friend of mine who travels from North Mumbai to South, peak hours in the local train, and it's miserable. You have to hang like this. I'm sure all of you must have. At least see, 500, 300 people can fit into that local train compartment, and more than 1,000 people are jammed in. And you have to smell each other's armpits, even though you don't want to. It's so okay. So I met him in the temple on Sunday, and he's feeling happy. He said, "You seem to be happy. 6 days a week you are traveling to the local train. You don't really get affected by it." He said, "Prabhu, he has found the partner. He's going to get married to her soon. The last 6 months, he was seeing her. They were meeting each other. So he said he stays in a place in Bollywood. So he said every day after work, we meet in that park. That is the park, and we talk. We connect. I'm so excited at the prospect of being with her that the whole day, morning to evening, even when I'm traveling in the train, I'm remembering the prospect of being with her. That gives me the strength to carry on my travel, carry on my work, and I text her. So if you love someone, then during the day you will manage, however busy you are, you will manage to call that person at least a couple of times or text that person, send some emojis. People do that, right? If they're in love with someone, they'll do that. Similarly, if you are connected to the divine, if you are connected to Krishna in this case, or connected to yourself, if you are any personalist, whatever, you will get time in your busy schedule to pause, accept yourself, love yourself, connect and move on. It's like calling the beloved. How are you? Hare Krishna. And feeling the love. When I was working, I had a boss. His cabin was next to mine. He had kept his pet's photo on his table. And you look at the pet. I asked him, what do you do? My pet died in an accident. His dog died in an accident. He was like, he feels connected, to the dog. So I said, wow, I can give Krishna's photo then. When people connect, people discover unique ways to connect with their lover, to their beloved. Let them be in the... Okay, I think this is an indication we should stop. But yeah, I hope that answers. I can do 5 minutes. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshwaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gadadhara Shivasari Gauravani Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste His Grace Vraja Bihari Prabhu ki Hare Krishna.